Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. America, Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good evening, folks. Another New Year's. We made it to 2021. I think we're all kind of glad that we're getting rid of 2020. So a little bit of a go time here. Tonight's program, we're talking about the era of innovation. Bathtubs, bird cages, and Buick. Jim Hinckley's America is a multifaceted travel network, an educational network, presentations, speaking engagements, website, live stream programs, blog, social media network, YouTube channel, 5 Minutes with Jim, audio podcast, we are sponsored in part through the magic of crowdfunding on the Patreon platform. You can find that at patreon.com/Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America is also sponsored in part by the Roadrunner Lodge in Tucumcari, New Mexico, the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri, the Uranus Fudge Company and General Store, Jenny Joy's Soap, Victoria Sugar Shack, Route 66 Tours, the Route 66 Association of Kingman, Arizona, Route 66 Navigation, Gilligan's Route 66 Tours. We have advertising packages that start at just $6.25 per week. The foundations for the American auto industry date back to the late 18th century. In 1769, the first steam-powered vehicle capable of human transportation was tested by Nicholas Cugnaw. In 1803, Hayden Weisgott designed the first car powered by the de Rivaz engine. Interestingly enough, it was an early engine that was fueled by hydrogen. In 1823, English engineer Samuel Brown invented the first industrial applied internal combustion engine. In 1882, the Italian Enrico Bernardi created the first petrol-powered vehicle, a tricycle, for his son Louis, and he drove it through the streets of a village near the Italian city of Verona. In 1885, Carl Benz developed a gasoline-powered automobile. Several vehicles with single-cylinder, four-stroke engines were produced. And historically, This is considered the first production vehicle, as he did produce several. But it was the bicycle that really put the world on wheels. In 1886, Thomas Stevens was the first person to circle the globe by bicycle. He rode a large-wheeled penny farthing from April 1884 to December of 1886. In 1885, John Kemp Starley produced the first successful, what we would think of today as a safety bicycle. The penny farthings were the old-style bicycles you picture in the movies, with a large front wheel that was pedaled and then a trailing small rear wheel. The safety bicycle was the Rover, patented in 1885, was the first bicycle with equal-sized front and back tires, chain drive. The ladies' version of the Roadster's design was very much in place by the 1890 period. On October 10th, Isaac Johnson was an African-American inventor. He filed a patent for a folding traveler's bicycle. This was the first with a modern diamond-type style frame. It's the pattern still used in 21st century bicycles. In 1890, the ladies' version of the bicycle with step-through frame was introduced. And then, interestingly enough, in 1897, Mr. Stevens really gave the a bicycle a real promotional boost. And I have no idea how he did this, but it was a heavily documented around-the-world trip in the late 1880s on a penny farthing bicycle. And his book has been reprinted and is now available on Amazon.com. Bicycling became all the rage by 1890. Bicycle racing, tandem bicycle racing, touring on bicycles became a national mania. In 1897, there were 27 U.S. bicycle firms in 1890, and they produced about 40,000 bicycles. In 1892, the Bicycle Railroad between Mount Holly, New Jersey, and the H.B. Smith Bicycle Manufacturing Company opened as kind of a tourist attraction in Smithville, New Jersey. It opened during the Mount Holly Fair, and 3,000 riders in its first week. And then in 1896, it was an explosion. We had 500 companies in the United States manufacturing more than 1.2 million bicycles. And a similar explosion was taking place throughout Europe. And incredibly, in 1897, $9 million was invested in cycling advertisement alone. That was 10% of all newspaper advertisement at the time. But the fad kind of began to wane as the popularity in automobiles began to grow and bicycle manufacturers began to diversify. An excellent example is Albert Pope. He established the Pope Manufacturing Company initially in 1867 to produce a variety of household products such as buckets, wash tubs, etc. And then in 1877 he designed a bicycle manufactured. It was manufactured by the Weed Sewing Machine Company and distributed through Pope Manufacturing Company. In 1899, Pope bought out 45 bicycle manufacturers and established the American Bicycle Company. Then, in the same year, he became partner in the electric vehicle company to manufacture electric hansom cabs for use in New York City. And in 1904, he began diversifying, the same as he did with his bicycles, with an array of automotive manufacturers. We had a lot of pioneers, key people. For example, George Selden. He created quite a problem. He tried to create a monopoly on automobile production. And it was Henry Ford that brought him down. He established a association of licensed automobile manufacturers. Anybody who wanted to produce automobiles had to pay Mr. Selden. In 1893, in Springfield, Massachusetts, the brothers Charles and Frank Duryea established the Duryea Motor Wagon Company. It was the first real automobile manufacturer in the United States. In 1897, the Olds Motor Vehicle Company was established. In 1898, the Haynes-Apperson Automobile Company was established. And in 1898, Studebaker began testing their first motor vehicle. Their first car was an electric designed by Thomas Edison. But it was still a curiosity in the mid-1890s. In fact, the Barnum and Bailey Circus gave a Duryea top billing over the albino, the fat lady, at the circus. One of the earliest proponents, pioneers if you will, was Ransom Eli Olds. He did an interview with Scientific American in 1892, and he mentioned that the automobile never kicks or bites, never tires on long runs, and never sweats in hot weather. It does not require care in the stable and only eats while on the road. His initial work was with steam-powered vehicles, but he quickly switched to the development of gasoline engines for marine and stationary applications that he applied to his horseless carriage projects. He built his first steam-powered car in 1884 and his first gasoline-powered car in 1896. And he is credited with developing the first stationary assembly line to produce automobiles. Excuse me. In 1904, Olds leaves and forms the REO Olds Motor Car Company, later changed to the REO Motor Car Company. And in 1906, he invents the world's first gasoline-powered lawnmower. Mr. Olds was a man of diverse interest. In 1916, he bought some property at the northern part of Tampa Bay in Florida and developed the city of Oldsmar for retired Olds workers and REO workers. Pierce Arrow was a leading manufacturer. They started out, as we did with many companies, in something totally different than automobiles. It started out in 1865 as Heinz, Pierce, and Moonshauer, established to manufacture household items including ice boxes, bird cages, and bread boxes. In 1896, George Pierce bought out his partners, reorganized the company, and initiates the manufacture of bicycles. In 1900, he created his first prototype automobile, a steamer. Excuse me. There was also work on electric vehicles. And then in 1901, he began manufacturing a single-cylinder automobile that he sold through his nationwide dealer network for Pierce bicycles. And he also started making Pierce Arrow motorcycles. Became one of the leading premier manufacturers of luxury automobiles. By the teens, it was the three P's were recognized throughout the world. Packard, Peerless, and Pierce Arrow. David Buick is an interesting story. In 1875, he had more than a dozen U.S. patents for plumbing-related innovations. One was being a process he developed to bond porcelain to cast iron, the cast iron bathtub. And then he established a manufacturing company, became one of the largest plumbing suppliers in Detroit. But he began tinkering with gasoline engines, marine engines for stationary application. And then he sold his share of the plumbing business and poured the money into the establishment of the Buick Auto Vim and Power Company. But he was more interested in experimentation. He was a very poor businessman. In 1903, Frank and Benjamin Briscoe, they financed Buick. They were leading manufacturers of sheet metal in Detroit. They financed Buick in exchange for controlling interest, and the Buick Motor Company was established. The Stanley twins, always famous now for the Stanley steamer, they too were very, very diverse in their interest. Kind of an intriguing little bit of trivia here. In 1885, the Stanley brothers patented a dry plate photographic process and launched the Stanley Dry Plate Company. This was the foundation for Eastman Kodak. Kind of a little footnote there. Their steam car set a land speed record in 1906 of nearly 150 miles an hour. They weren't the only company that had diverse origins. Adams and Falwell started out as a manufacturer of grave markers. Fox started out as a shotgun company. Checker, the origins of that was as a leading manufacturer of pants. Marmon, another premier luxury car, began as a manufacturer of flour milling machinery. The Glide automobile started out as a producer of peanut and coffee roasters. And it just goes on and on and on. The Jackson Company in Jackson, Michigan, started as a manufacturer of farm machinery. Here's an interesting and overlooked chapter. Frederick Patterson. Here's a former slave, C.R. Patterson, and they become a leading manufacturer of buggies and wagons. They diversified and began supplying automobile bodies. And his son took the business into the modern era and began producing carriages as well as automobiles. And after they quit producing automobiles, they became a leading producer of bodies for hearses, buses, delivery vans, and milk trucks. J. Walter Christie, another forgotten pioneer. Innovative. He started out with bridge construction. Excuse me. As with so many pioneers in the industry, he became interested in automobiles, and this was a little bit different. He became a pioneer in the development of front-wheel drive automobiles, perfected it quite well, had patents in numerous countries, but he was not a real good businessman. He started tinkering with front-wheel drive taxi cabs. Interestingly, his big money maker was a tractor unit that fire departments could purchase, and it would replace horses for horse-drawn fire equipment. He just developed a track and bogie mechanism that became almost universal for military tanks. And he continued work on suspension systems and front-wheel drive well into the 1940 period. Here you see J. Walter Christie at the wheel of one of his front-wheel drive race cars. And it's amazing, before 1910, how many companies, almost every town in America seemed to have a car company, or 3 car companies, or 20 car companies. Obviously, this puts a real glut on a very limited market. And so Benjamin Briscoe hatched up an idea. Why don't we corner the market? Benjamin Briscoe, the idea was William Durant was an innovator, and he had gained control of Buick Motor Company from Briscoe. Briscoe had went on, joined with Jonathan Maxwell from an engineer from Oldsmobile, and launched Maxwell Briscoe. Well, Briscoe's idea was to take Buick and Ford and Olds and Rio and Maxwell Briscoe and put together one company that supplied a car for every need and market. Well, the deal fell apart largely because Henry Ford's ego got in the way. Well, William Durant took the ball and ran with it, and it becomes very complicated. But basically, he started a company called General Motors. And he was a real swashbuckler, and he overextended himself. And 1910, he was forced out of the company, but he had an ace in the hole. He joined with an old partner, J. Dallas Dort. Louis Chevrolet had been a Swiss bicycle racer, came to the United States with Fiat, and became a leading race driver. He and his brothers, Louis, Arthur, and Gaston, mechanics and race drivers. Durant had put them to work as a factory race team for Buick. He had household recognition. So Durant gets the money together and establishes a new company called Chevrolet. Chevrolet is hoping to build a high-performance automobile, but Durant wants simply to use the company to take over General Motors, which he does, and buys out Louis Chevrolet. And it becomes a very convoluted and messy situation. It involves Walter Chrysler, Charles Nash, countless others. Even with all this consolidation, even as late as by the 1916 period, there were still companies, dozens and dozens of automobile companies in the United States. And the whole society was dramatically being transformed. You can see the numbers here for horse-drawn vehicles manufactured versus automobiles manufactured. And there's an interesting little tidbit down here. 2 out of 5 families in 1920 have indoor plumbing, but 3 out of 5 own an automobile. And Ford dominated universally, worldwide. But that was very short-lived, because by 1921, the Model T was just hopelessly outdated and archaic. And it would be 1927 before Ford would address that. Anybody and everybody with an idea was making automobiles or attempting to make automobiles, no matter how outlandish and how bizarre. Mr. Teeter is one of the great pioneers that we don't know much about. He's overlooked far too much. Brilliant man, invented all kinds of things, perfected electric razors, steam turbines, gyros for torpedoes. Perfect Circular Piston Ring Company dominated the industry. His most famous creation is cruise control. But one of the most astounding things about Mr. Teeter, very inspirational story, he had been injured and there was a feminine side to the American auto industry that's often overlooked. Here you can see a few of the women behind things like design at Studebaker. Florence Lawrence was a silent movie star, one of the first mega stars dating back 1905, 1906. She was credited with in coming up with the first automotive turn signal. Unfortunately, she failed to file a patent. It was a woman who created the first automatic windshield wiper. And Mrs. Lawrence made her, she's an astounding woman. And like I say, she'd come up with a brake warning system. She'd come up with a turn signal system, first electric windshield wiper. Streamlining by the 1930s became a very, very big thing, combined with Art Deco designs. And one of the leaders in development and streamlining vehicles was William Stout. He was an aeronautical designer. He was instrumental in things like the Ford Trimotor. And he came up with the Stout Scarab, kind of the grandfather of the minivan, if you will. Another surprise about the infancy of the American auto industry is the role of the electric vehicles. A little bit of trivia for you, better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all. The first person ever struck and killed by an automobile was a gentleman named Bliss in New York, and he was struck and killed by an electric taxi cab. Woods was one of the true pioneers. The first automobile imported into Hawaii was a Woods. But one of their more intriguing ideas was the Woods dual power, introduced in 1916. It was a hybrid. It had a 4-cylinder gas engine for the highway, and it served as an auxiliary for the electric motor. But in town, or when the gasoline engine was idle, it was a fully electric automobile. Steam had pretty much run its course by 1915. A few companies, the Stanley brothers, stayed with steam, and the last real push on steam was Abner Doble. And he took steam about as far as it could possibly go. I doubt if steam could be perfected any more than what it was done with his Dobles. This, you're looking at a Detroit Electric. They stayed the same well up into 1930 with very few changes. They lowered the roof line a bit, but the rest of the car basically stayed the same. And how's that for safety? You have a passenger in the front facing the rear. And if you notice, there's no steering wheel. One lever is your speed and steering, and one is the Detroit Electric was the most successful of all the electric companies. They managed to survive until 1939 and even tried to make their car look more modern, if you will. And their last, some of their but amazingly, this sounds really good. 211 miles on a single charge. They were talking at speeds of 20 miles an hour. To give you an idea of the diversity in some of these pioneers, Henry Leland started his career in mechanics, precision engineering, if you will, as an apprentice at Colt Firearms. And he played an instrumental role in the establishment of Cadillac, of Lincoln, and in World War I, Liberty aircraft engines. I mentioned Benjamin Briscoe briefly. Previously, of course, he was instrumental with Buick. Buick became the cornerstone for GM. And after Maxwell Briscoe, he established a company called Briscoe, short-lived. But Maxwell Briscoe imploded about 1912 because he was competing with General Motors. And the company then became Maxwell, and in 1925, that became Chrysler. Charles Nash, tremendous fellow, very fascinating. A whole program could be done on Charles Nash. He was involved with Durant Dort wagons, Buick, GM, Nash, and Jeffrey 4x4 trucks during World War I. Durant had multiple business endeavors that were just almost circular and incestual in their financing, promotion, and advertisement. And there's a personal connection to all of this. This is my grandfather in Jackson, Michigan, involved with all kinds of different things, and I had been piecing the story together over the years, but this is the cornerstone. This is what launched me into my love for the automotive industry, the era of innovation between 1890 and 1930 was a quest to know more about this fellow who was born in 1865. He was 63 years old when my father was born in 1928. And that takes us to this, Jim Hinckley's America.com. You can find more. You can find us on Facebook. And you can contact me by email if you're interested in presentations. I want to remind you that this Sunday, Coffee with Jim is a road trip on Route 66 in Missouri. That's 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, live streamed on the Jim Hinckley's America Facebook page. I hope you've enjoyed this program as much as I've enjoyed sharing it with you. And like I say, Sunday morning we'll be having another little program. Should be really entertaining. I hope you can join us for this. Stay tuned for other programs that will be coming up soon. Thank you for joining us this evening.